sisters in preparation for the bonfire. Do you have a dedication?
Yes, I do. So I've been asked to dedicate chanting for well-wishing of Mr. Matthew Perry, who played the role of Chandler Bing on the TV show Friends and brightened many people's lives with his humour and good energy. He passed away on the full moon of October this year. And I've also been asked to dedicate some blessings for Gaynor, who lives in Wales, who's struggling at the moment.
So the Saritas begin on page 32 in the light brown book.
Tatiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami Tatiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami Tatiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami Mohamala Pakato Samang Wabuddho Sugato Vimuto Mara Sapa
สาวินิโมจายันโตภาเปสิเกมังจนะทังนิเมยังบุดังวารังกังศิรสานามามิโลกาสนาทังชาวินายกังจัตตังเตจัสสาเตชยสิทธิโหตุสาบันตรายะจาวินาสเมนตุธัมโมจะโจโยวิยตาสสะตุดาเสสิโลกาสวิสุทธิมากะนิยานิโกธัมมตาราสธาริสัตตาวะโหสันติการโรสุจินโนธัมมังวารันตังศิรสานามามิโมอาปะดาลังอุปสันตตาหังทันเทจัสสาเทจยสิทธิโหตุสาบันตรายะจาวินาสเมนตุสัทธัมมเสนะสุขตานุโกโยโลกาสปาปุปะกิเลสเจตาสันโตสายังสันตินิโยจะโกจะสวากาทธัมมังวิริตังกโรติสังฆังวารันตังศิรสานามามิบุตตานุบุตตังสัมมาสีลดิติทันเทจัสสาเทจยสิทธิโหตุสาบันตรายะจาวินาสเมนตุอเสวนาจะบาลาปันติตานันจะเสวนาปูจาจะปูจามิยานังเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังปฏิรูปเดสวาโสจะปุเปชกตปุญญาตาอาทัสสัมมาปานิติจาเรธัมมังกลมุตตมังปาหุสัจจัญจะสิปัญจวินัยโยจะสุสิกิโตสุภาสิตาจยาวาจาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังมาตาปิตุอุปาทานังพุทธดาราสสังฆาโออนาคุลาจะคัมมันตาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังดานัญจะธัมมจาริยาจะญาตกานัญจะสังฆาโออนาวาจานิกัมมานิเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังอารติวิรติปาปะมาจะปานาจะสัญญโมอาปมาโดจะธัมเมสุเอธัมมังกลมุตตมังการโวจะนิวาโตจะสันตุติจะกสัญยุตากาเลนะธัมมาสวนาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังกันทิจะโสวจาสตาสัมมนานัญจะดาสนังกาเลนะธัมมัสสกาจาเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังตัพโพจะพรหมจาริยาจะอริยสัจจานาดัสสนังนิบานัสสะเจกิริยาจะเรตัมมังกลมุตตมังพุทธัสสะโลกธัมเมหิจิตังยาสนกัมป ติยโสกังวิราจังเกมังเอตัมมังกลมุตตมังเอตาดิสานิกัตวานาสาบาตมะปราจิตาสาบาตโสทิงกัจฉันติทันเตสัมมังกลมุตตมันทิยันทันสันตังปะดังอภิสัมเมจัสสะโกอุจุจัสสุจุจัสสุวัจโจจัสสัมมุตวานาติมานิสันตุสักโกจัสสุบาโรจะอาปะกิโจจัสสาลาหุกาวุติสันตินทริโยจะนิปะโกจะอาปะกาโบคุเลสุอานานุกิโตนาจักขุดังสัมมาจาเรคินชิเยนะวิญโยปาเรอุปาวะเตโยสุขิโนวาเขมิโนหนตุสาเบสัตตาภวันตุสุขิตาตานาเกจิปานาบุตตาปิตัสสาวะทาวาราวะอนาวะเสสาติกาวะเยมหันตาวะมาจิมาราสกะอนุกตุลาทิตาวะเยจะติตาเยจะดุเรวสันติอวิดุเรพุทธาวาสัมภเวสีวะสาเดสาคาภวันตุสุขิตาตานาปโรปารังนิคุเบตนาติมังเยตกาตชินังกินจิปายาโรสนาปฏิกสัญญานัญญมัญญาสดุกมิเชยมาตายตานิยังพุทธังอายุสาเอกพุทธมนุราเกเอวังปิสาบาบุเตสุมาณสัมบาวะเยอปาริมาณังเมตัญจะสาบาโลกัสสมิมาณสัมบาวะเยอปาริมาณังอุดังอโตจะทิริยัญจะสัมบาดังกเวรังกัสสปะทันติตัญจารังนิสิโนวะสยานโนวะยาวตาสวิกตมิโตเอตังสตินาเตเทยบรมเมตังวิหารังอิตมาหุติติงชานุปกัมมสีลวะดัสสเนนะสัมปันโนคาเมสุวิเนยเกตังนาหิจาตุกาบาเสยังปุณเวทิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณสัมปันโนสุขโตโลกวิทูอนุทาโรบริสัทธัมมัสสารติสัตตาเทวมนุสานังพุทโธภควาติสวากาโตภควตาธัมโมสันติติโกวะคาลิโกเอหิปัสสิโกโอปัญญิโกปัจจตังเวทิตาโบวินยูหิติสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอุจุปฏิปันโนภ Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Nyaya Patipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Samichi Patipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Yatidam Chatari Purisa Yugani Ata Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Ahuneyo Bahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutaram Punya Ketam Lokasati
Bojangho Sati Sankhato
Dhammanam Vijayo Tata Viriyam Piti Pasati Bojanga Chatata Pare Samadupeka Bojanga Sate Te Sabadasina Munina Sabadakata Bhavita Bahulekata Samvatanti Abhinyaya Nibbanaya Chabodhiya Etena Sacha Vachena Sotite Votu Sabada Ekasamin Samaye Nato Mogalanan Chakasapan Kilane Dukite Disawa Vojange Sata Desahite Chatam Abhinanditawa Roga Muchin Sutankane Etena Sacha Vachena Sotite Votu Sabada Ekada Dhammaraja Pigelanena Pipilito Chunda Terena Tanye Vapana Petawana Sadaram Sammodita Vacha Abada Dhamma Buddha Sitana So Etena Sacha Vachena Sotite Votu Sabada Ahina Techa Abada Tina Rampi Mahesina Magahata Kilesa Vapadanubhati Dhammata Etena Sacha Vachena Sotite Votu Sabada
Dukkha Pata Chani Dukkha
Bhaya Pata Chani Bhaya Soka Pata Chani Soka Hotu Sabe Pipaniyo Heta Vata Chahame Sampada Bunya Sampada Sabe Dewa Numodantu Sabha Sambhati Siddhiya Dhanam Dadantu Sadaya Sila Rakantu Sabada Bhavana Pirata Hontu Gachantu Devata Gata
Sabe Buddha
Parapata Pachekanam Shayam Baram Arahantanam Chatechena Rakam Bandami Sabaso
Mahakaruniko Nato
Hitaya Sabapaninam Puretawa Parami Sabapato Sambo Uttama Etena Sacha Vajena Hotu Te Jaya Mangalam Jayanto Bodhiyamule Sakyanam Nandi Vadano Evantavam Vijayo Hojaya Sujaya Mangale Aparajita Palanke Sise Patame Pokare Abhiseke Sababodhana Agapato Pramodati Sunakatam Sumangalam Supapatam Suhutikam Sukrano Subohoto Chasuyitam Brahmachari Supadakina Kaya Kamma Vacha Kamma Padakina Padakina Mano Kamma Panidite Padakina Padakina Nikatawana Labhantate Padakine.
So, being the new moon night, opportunity if the lay people would like to request the 8 precepts, this will be the opportunity. Somebody would like to request? Okay, well anyway, yeah. Just determine them in your mind or stay in the monastery. So if we'd like to request the Dhamma talk. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So it's the Uposatha day, and this morning, because we recited the precepts, and maybe Siladhara brought her precepts to mind, Samanuras, Anagarikas, Anagarikas. So this is part of something that's seen as a skillful thing to do, just to realign ourselves on the path of virtue. If some of those precepts are getting a bit shaky, we can, acknowledge it's getting shaky, and then, determined to try to be more skillful in the future. Because this training, it's a gradual training. We don't become sort of pure overnight, you might say. But we have to gradually learn about, skillfulness of body, speech. So the precepts about, how to guide our actions of body and speech in ways that are not going to be, harmful for ourselves and harmful for others. So the precepts are about body and speech, and then meditation is about looking after the mind. So it's a whole training of body, speech and mind. And the more we can be more skillful with our actions of body, speech and mind, then this is more conducive towards having a more peaceful mind, less defilements, less hindrances, and a quality of mind that can give rise to insight. But the Buddha said that the fuel of sort of the hindrances that block insight is unskillfulness of body, speech and mind, unskillful actions of body, speech and mind. So our practice is about gradually refining these things. And especially in terms of developing meditation to be more aware in the present moment of the mind and impulses. So in one teaching that the Buddha gave to his son, he asked the question, Rahula, what is the purpose of a mirror? And Rahula said, to see oneself, to see one's reflection. And the Buddha said, in the same way we should reflect on our actions of body, speech and mind. And in three ways, before one does a physical act, to reflect. Is this going to lead to harmfulness of oneself and others? Or is it going to be a benefit to oneself and others? Have a moment to reflect before we do something. And then, actually while one's doing something, to reflect in the same way. Is this really what I'm doing here? Is it really bringing benefit to oneself or others? Or is it just seems to be making things worse? So we might be doing some sort of work of some sort and just getting more tense, frustrated, angry, and maybe we reflect. Maybe it's time just to put it down for a while rather than getting obsessive about it. But also after one's done something and seen the results of it, then also to reflect, was that really beneficial, necessary? Did it do more harm than usefulness? So again, we can reflect. So reflecting before one's bodily action, being able to reflect while we're doing a bodily action, and being able to reflect after to see when we see the results. And this is how we learn, isn't it? So first we don't see the sort of drawbacks of certain things until after we've done it. But that's how we learn, isn't it? Gradually learning to be more wise in terms of our physical action. Same with speech. Before we say something, just a moment to reflect, is this going to be of benefit to oneself and others, or more harmful to oneself and others? So certain sorts of speech don't leave a good effect on the quality of mind for oneself, and also on the quality of mind for the people who have to listen. So this is what we can reflect on. But there's certain ways of speaking that can have a beneficial, it feels good after, and the people you're talking to seem to have benefit from it. So this is again developing that skill to know before what can be skillful speech. Then while we're speaking, we may notice that so we're getting a bit sort of, irritated, angry, aggressive. So maybe it's time to, to change mode. Maybe end the conversation. But if it's going well, it's useful, then okay, then one can continue. And then reflecting afterwards, again, seeing the results in one's own heart in terms of the results of the conversation and how it affected the people who were listening. So again, this is how we learn, seeing the results of things and then maybe thinking, try to be more skillful in the future. And same applies to the mind, the tendency of the mind to go into certain trains of thought. And we see the mind go into a train of thought we think is not going to be beneficial, how to not allow the mind to go there. Or it's already in a sort of mode of thinking that's not so skillful, how to turn our thoughts to something else. Or maybe don't realize we've been caught up in an unskillful train of thought till after it's over. We notice, gosh, I got caught up again. Again, this is how we learn, isn't it? Learn to see the results. And this is a gradual training. It's not something, it's not an overnight thing. It's something we must gradually bring our awareness to. So, like certain mind states, before we came to practice, we would just maybe act on, speak on. Take a thing like, say, restlessness. Maybe before we come to the practice, when we felt restless, we just keep on doing things, just have something to do. Whether it was skillful or unskillful, just to have to do something. I think they recognize this tendency in meditation circles because maybe it's our conditioning too. I mean, the old conditioning about don't just sit there, do something. So they coined a phrase in American Meditation Center, don't just do something, sit there. So, and, if we just follow that restless energy all the time, then we just keep it going. And then it can also manifest in terms of speech, can't it? The restless mind, the speech can get a bit unskillful. Just for the sake of speaking and, gets a bit frivolous or mocking or something. The restless mind manifesting in speech. for myself, I tended to manifest as wanting to do things. And, when I got into Dharma practice, I used to go to the Hampstead Vihara on a Sunday night. And in those days, Lumpur Sumedho lived there. And it was a great way to start the week, sitting there, meditating with the monks there, listening to a Dhamma talk. And it really seemed to set me up good for the week. But 1979, Lumpur Sumedho and the monks moved to Chithurst. So I thought, well, try and keep my Sunday night Dharma reflection, meditation going under my own steam. And I remember one particular Sunday night, I was really restless. I couldn't sit. Really restless. So I thought I'd maybe just go try and do some walking meditation. So I thought I'd do a walk around the block for a while. I think it was a sort of summer evening, and there was a nice part of it was a walk through some trees and things where I lived. So I started on my walk, and I got to the top of the road, and there was a cinema at the top of the road. And there was a martial arts movie on the cinema. And I was doing martial arts in those days. And the pull, to go and see the movie. This pull, but then I reflected. I said, okay, what'll happen if you go and see the movie? Okay, while you're watching it, the restless will go, because it's replaced by, sense contact, watching an exciting movie. But I thought, well, what after the movie's over? I thought, I'll be sat there with all those images and perceptions and fighting, and I decided I might should pull myself away. And then I carried on the walk. I got back to the flat, and the mind had settled a bit then. Just felt a bit more settled. And then I picked up a Dhamma book and read a little bit of Dhamma. And then I was settled enough just to sit and meditate. And this nice peacefulness came to the mind. And I thought, gosh, I'm glad I didn't go to the movie. Because the restlessness went and I felt very peaceful. Ready for the week ahead. So this is just an example that, of whether we, how we follow things sometimes, but sometimes learn to just sit with them. Be with the restlessness. And then bring it back to the mind. And the restless mind that can go into certain habits, but now the mind's restless, but the mind's more contemplating in the light of the Dhamma. So we're not a slave to it anymore, but we can reflect on it. So from a time when once we used to just follow it, or speak on it, now we can more observe it, and reflect skillfully on it, a mind state. And this applies to all these sort of hindrances we experience. Not acting on it, not speaking on it, and the ability to be with it, but reflect skillfully on it. And then these things lose their power. So that's a sort of gradual training. When the Buddhist says about how certain actions of body, speech and mind give rise to these hindrances. So maybe when I reflect on my pre-Buddhist life, just seeking, say, excitement to the senses, just feeding the sensual desire. But, when I see what the results of that was, that in terms of these hindrances, that also contributes to the restlessness and boredom, because you get so used to a certain level of stimulation, then your mind's always seeking that. So it gives rise to sort of restlessness and boredom, looking, the mind that's seeking something through desire. And, it's seeking something to bring pleasantness, isn't it? Natural tendency, but what can tend to happen is what gives you the sort of satisfaction 1 minute doesn't give you the satisfaction the next. It's just like movies, Some of the action in movies, like 40 years ago, wouldn't be much appealing now because it's not strong violence enough. We're used to a greater level of action. So, what keeps one, gives you the satisfaction one day, doesn't the next. So we have to go to more extremes, don't we? More extremes to get the pleasant hit, the satisfaction. But then, the attachment to pleasant things, the more we crave pleasant things, my experience was the more one becomes averse towards unpleasant things. So it gives rise to aversion, because, you cling to the pleasant aspect of things intensely, and then you get, negative, averse when you don't have it. So I see that as like one conditions the other. The more we crave for the pleasant, the more we're averse to the unpleasant. So that's sense, desire, and aversion. And also the more we attach to pleasant, then the more fear, worry, anxiety we have about experiencing the unpleasant. So we get all these other hindrances. So I found just time around the more fearfulness, anxiety about, experience something unpleasant. So all these sort of hindrances start to arise in the mind. And then if we also depend on some sort of stimulation, then when that's taken away, it can be the opposite of restlessness. Is like a dullness. The mind dulls out because it's nothing to keep it stimulated anymore. And this is, like I experienced in more my monastic life. At first was the restlessness, but then it settled down. But then a lot of dullness and sleepiness. Meditation was just trying to stay awake because there's nothing to stimulate anymore. Because the mind didn't have its own energy. It always depended on things to keep it sort of energized. One thing I did find, helpful in those days when I was really trying to stay awake, I was just about to start a Vassa retreat in the forest after my third Vassa. And just before the retreat, the senior monk at the monastery at that time, he said to me, take it time to learn the Patimokkha. And I thought, I just want to meditate. I have to learn the Patimokkha. But I thought, probably a good thing to do. But actually it was really helpful, because just to make the effort to memorize something was really good for the sloth and torpor I was experiencing at the time. And it's one of the methods the Buddha recommended, memorizing things as a way of, energizing the mind in a good way, and also focusing the mind. And at first, memorizing things didn't go in very quick. But the more I did it, I found things I started to learn things quicker. It's sort of a bit like, it's like a muscle you haven't used, and as you use it more, it gets stronger. And it really helped with the sloth and torpor. And also after that, really it was a hard retreat. It really was, really workout. But after I noticed after that sometimes a slightly depressive state I used to feel in the mornings. The mind didn't sink so low anymore. Because somehow they learned the patimokkha and it sort of just brought the energy, a good energy into the mind. So that's something to reflect on. Sometimes in our spare time, we just read things for some sort of intellectual stimulation, but sometimes just to recite. Again, are we depending on things to keep us interested, energized? Going from one book to another. And our encouragement in the practice, I don't, in the first year to learn morning and evening chanting and some of the reflections, to know that by the end of your first year. By the end of your second year, to have learned the parittas and the funeral chanting. Yeah? How many people were using the books tonight? Just something to consider. Really good practice, memorizing. Really good for the, supporting for the practice. So I can see how, from my unskillful youth and my sensual inclinations, it left a lot of hindrances in the mind. So I had to, work with them for quite a few years. But, the more you practice with it, then these things lessen and lose their power. And, leaves you more with a peaceful mind that can just enjoy simple things in the present moment. So I always, I used to, one thing I used to reflect, that small minds need great things to keep them happy, but great minds can be happy with small things. But the mind that's that abandons these hindrances is a mind that gives rise to insight. And the Buddha gave analogies about about the quality of mind. So, like the analogy about gold, when gold has impurities, it doesn't shine, it's dull, it's brittle, you can't do anything with it. And he says that's like the mind that has hindrances. But if we refine the gold, take out the impurities, then the gold is bright, shining, you can make into all sorts of nice shapes, you can do what you want with it. So the Buddha says the same with the mind. And that's like I've been mentioned tonight, the sort of practice of refining, gradually refining the mind. In terms of actions of body, speech, and mind, not giving rise to more karma or hindrances. and gradually learn the skill of doing that. And, we have the Dharma and Vinaya to support this practice. To be aware of, our actions of body and speech, and also to be aware of the mind. When the mind is getting into, things that are not going to bring a good result, how to reflect skillfully. So actually the mind is also one of the sense bases. So also, just like we can overstimulate ourselves with visual things, also we can actually overdo it with the mind stimulation too. Obsessive thinking about something. To a point where we can't sleep. Different theories about things, different concepts about things. It's how we can just get so excited over a train of thought and just get carried away with it. That's the mind sense. Interesting to reflect that some of the greatest thinkers of our time have been depressed. Why is that? Too much energy into the mind, too much getting carried away with the mind, the stimulation from thought, losing balance. So, how to bring more balance back, doing something physical, getting back into the body, and just using the mind to memorize. These days people get into all sorts of conspiracy theories and all sorts of things that just are exciting, interesting, and so on, but just get carried away with it. And does it really have a good effect on the quality of mind in the long run? And this is how we can reflect. Certain exciting themes that actually not really useful in the long run, but just overstimulate the mind so we can't rest the mind, we can't sleep. So that's again, isn't it? Knowing before one gets into a train of thought, while we're in the train of thought, or after, just seeing the results of it. This is how we learn. So, in effect, we're like the goldsmith. we have the handbook about how to take all the impurities out of gold. So that's the work of the samana. Gradually refining. And it's not generally a quick process. I mean, like in this, the Buddha said about the samana being like the farmer to grow his crops. Must give it sunshine, good soil, and water. He does that, but then the farmer can't say how much the crops are going to grow from one day to the next, but all he can do is set the right conditions. So in the same way, in practice, we have the training of sila, samadhi and panya, of virtue, meditation, wisdom, and that's what we can cultivate. And how quickly deeper insights arise, we can't predict. But that's the duty of the samana, just like the duty of the farmer. So today has been the Patimokkha. We do reflect on our sila, and we come together to meditate together and reflect on the Dhamma. So I think I'll offer those reflections this evening.
Sharing of blessings in English, which is verses of sharing and aspiration, page 33 in the dark brown book. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled. Closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The Blessed Blessed One's disciples,
who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
the Blessed One's disciples,
Who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Would you like to take this and put this back? Oh, and so turn off the camera.